Hi, good morning. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to talk about loading planning. We have the presence of James Schwartz, who serves as a design data's custom success representative and has been with the software company since 2000. And Dr. Ray Alker, PE, PhD, Director of Research and Education at Beamform Global. Dr. Alker will be moderating today. Welcome.
Wonderful. And for everyone attending, I've had the pleasure of crossing paths with James for over a decade within the steel industry. We've both served in various capacities and on committees and task forces within AISC and other parts in collaboration within ISD, National Institute of Steel Detailers, and as well as just keeping up with the trends of what's going on with technology. And so I've always found James to be a sage that I could go to and get some meaningful perspectives. And today's topic we're going to dive into with James. Um, Really, it was something I had seen. He showed it to us a couple months ago, and it was addressing a very interesting challenge in the building industry, and getting at something I've often referred to as the last 100 feet of the model. It's that distance between what's happening in the field trailer and what's happening on the building, and that disconnect between um, information where you might have BIM managers for the GC are doing a lot of things model based, but how do we get it from the fabricator to the field and from the field erected? And what does that flow look like? We're going to be talking about a new section that James was a consultant on in the LOD specification. This is BIMform Global's 2023 LOD specification. And in doing that, there have been quite a new number of sections added to the LOD specification. Concrete repair, and that's going to be a presentation we're going to do here in a couple months, had a new section added to it. Wood and mass timber, and then site, landscape, and site elements were really expanded in the 22 version, and the collaboration of those is moving forward in 23 and the current work we're doing on the 24 version. Additionally, in the 23 version, we added crane systems. These would be typically overhead crane systems and their coordination. And there's some synergies with metal building manufacturers. Trailer load planning, which we're going to talk about today, as well as structurally insulated panels were added to the specification. And so future webinars will be going over areas in the concrete strengthening and this really approach to get towards the vocabulary teams need to write scope, schedule, and fees for digital twin initiatives, particularly in existing concrete buildings where we're doing strengthening. Mass timber sections were added originally in 22 and are expanded in 23. Landscape, large shrubs, these were added in the 22 version and continue to grow, no pun intended there. Insulated structural panels, we're really getting into looking at the manufacturing and assembly of projects on site as opposed to stick built construction. So that lends itself to when you go into manufacturing workflows, a key component of it is how you get the materials at the right time, just in time delivery. And this is the section that James helped expand in trailer loading. And we're going to talk some today on what that means when you've got trailer loading at LOD 200, 300, 350, coordination of other elements, and 400, which is full fabrication level information within the trailer loading. And with that, James, I'm going to stop sharing so you can begin sharing your presentation.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm going to go and do just that. Let's make sure we get all our ducks in a row. And everybody can see my screen, correct? Good. Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, Will. That was awesome. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of start off Again, I don't use a lot of slides, but just to kind of give an idea for record keeping. The purpose of today's high level presentation is really to demonstrate how a 3D fabrication model can be used to improve your loading, shipping, erection processes, and your fabrication as well, of course. And I'm going to show a couple of softwares that are available right now, today, that can be utilized to do this. So why are we bringing this in? Well, we all kind of know how 3D models have revolutionized our entire industry, the construction industry. Fabricators especially rely upon these, and they use them for estimation, procurement, fabrication, erection. Now they're actually bringing them back up into for as-built sets. I mean, we know how good they are, but why not trailer loading? We still do trailer loading the old-fashioned way, and that's what I want to kind of bring up is that people go in there. For those that aren't familiar with the process, you take the tonnage, you take what the capacity of the trailer is, you divide, and then by that capacity, and hey, voila, you know the number of trailers, high level estimate. Then, of course, working with the fabricator erector, they will determine what the sequences are, which, by the way, sometimes change, due to certain conditions along the way. So you need something to be flexible enough for that. And then the fabricator will create a load list based off of the length and weight. Well, what's missing from that is geometry. Now, there are proprietary tools that are out there within the softwares, the various fabrication authoring tools that do allow you to go in there and, create a little bit of a better list than just looking at drawings and looking at weight and length. But nothing comes to actually loading the trailer, and that's what we're going to be looking at today, especially with what Will was talking about with from that LOD perspective. You're going to actually see some of this stuff. So again, of course, we are aware of the shortcomings that. For those who are not familiar in the fabrication shop, there's a lot of speculation by the loader. I don't know how many times the loader would have to go on vacation or something, like the critical main loader, and then everybody was kind of panicking. Offloading, this was very important because what happens, the more you touch steel, the more chance of something happening. We're not moving toothpicks here, right? We're moving these, 10,000-pound pieces of steel. And once you place it, you build around it. And if you have to offload it, it becomes very time consuming, expensive, rejected loads by drivers, extra trailers. I don't know how many times we used to joke with galvanized. You send one trailer out and you bring two trailers, you got to get another trailer to bring it back. So again, clearing the shop floor. These are some of the things that people might be familiar with where you can't leave steel lying around. It's a hazard. So they drag it out to the yard, dump it, and then deal with it magically by a loader. That really doesn't scream a lot of planning in it, does it? Right? There's a lot of that whole portion of it. We're so refined. And then we get to this. And then, of course, we also have to talk about overages and extra costs because unbalanced trailers and so forth. We've got the technology today. We can do better than this, right? And that's what I'm trying to get at right here with this. So, some of the things that we're going to see today in the presentation to give you an idea. You can see there's some snapshots up there. You get that data, once it's in there, you get all this information that you can go ahead and instantly export those bill of ladings, those load maps, those connected models for the erector. You can even go as far as using a tablet to be able to look at it and build it. This is what we're going to see here. Interface with the material requirement planning software. This is very important because you want to know if something's issued for fabrication. Is it on hold? The erector wants to know if things, I don't know how many times talking with erectors that they're like, we don't know how it's going to come. Is it all going to be shipped together as a frame? Is it going to be a broken down truss? These are things that this 3D model is going to help out with. And this is why it's so important.
Question on
Yeah.
that, James, just for the audience, could you go into a little of the importance of the load maps? And you may be addressing it here in a few slides. So,
Yeah. Again, the load map is basically, and we're going to see an example of this when I go through the demonstration portion. It shows layer by layer how that steel is going to be placed onto the trailer. It also gives you the location of the center of gravity as well. So it gives you the thickness of the dunnage, which is the blocking for some people in between the steel. And that can be presented in a 2D image or as a 3D image, which can go on to a tablet, which allows you to actually dissect further down. Does that help?
definitely. Thank you.
Okay. And then, of course, and these are just some of the benefits of it. Like I said, once you have this model, you've got all this ability to extract it. So, what I'm going to do here is I tried to make this as quick so we do have time for questions. Let me go ahead and open up this particular product. Now, I've already imported a model here just to kind of save a little bit of time. But most of the fabricators that I work with will work with two main authoring tools. They'll be either building their fabrication model in Tekla Structures or in SDS2. Now, this particular product that I'm using right here allows you to work off an IFC2X3, which is great because we pull in all that data. So whatever data is in that model from that authoring tool, we will pull it in. And we also accumulate certain pieces of data that are required here. Now, the nice thing about this is that it takes in the 2X3, it brings in the weights. So if you have concrete, steel, whatever it is, we're bringing that in. In fact, it even has the capability as models change and expand to bring in these different updates. And that's very important. You need something that's flexible if you're going to be choosing a product to be able to use these 3D models. And we take in this one here, particularly takes in a 2X3 from Tekla Structures, BoCAD, CADWorks, and of course SDS2 as well. So information feedback, that's another important thing. We're going to go in here. I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration because in this particular building, I may have separate buildings. You want to be able to bring in, for example, let's say part of the project was done on Tekla Structures and part of the project was done on SDS2. Again, I'm just trying to tell you the products that were used in this.
Right.
And that's where I'm just going with that. The whole point behind this presentation is using 3D models to help facilitate load shipping and erection and to move towards pull planning with your fabrication. So you have all this data, like I was saying, when you grab these, you can see that we accumulate data that you're most likely going to be using, and of course, any other data that's added in there into that ISC file. Same applies when you're dealing with the Tekla model. You have that as well here. So again, just showing you this versatility that you need to be considering when you're working with this. I'm just going to go take out that Tekla one for this one right now. Um, Next, what we want to look at is filtering. I talked about all this information that can come across. So you want to be able to go in and do filtering so that I can load my trailers. Will mentioned just in time, right? And that's what we're looking at here is basically fabricate based off of what's needed on the field when it is actually needed. So I'm just going to go and hide some secondary information that we have here. Now, again, just kind of demonstrating some of the things that are available to you. I would like to bring up the fact that I mentioned how sequences sometimes change because that's the whole thing about planning. Things change, right? Especially in this industry, it can be very fluid. So you also can add in, for example, here's an example of some properties. And by the way, these properties will also be exported, and I'm calling this, a lot of people will call this not a work set, but they'll call it a work set, which is basically breaking down that sequence into smaller portions. So I'm going to go and add this in, and then I'm going to select this area. And I'm basically going to say, okay, out of this entire sequence, this is what I want to start with. So then I can start loading my trailers based on that just in time method that we want to
And
do.
and let me interject a little, just background. I don't know all the background of the audience, but so sequences are what would flow through the shop, and they've been released for. They've gone through shop drawing review, whatever the contracting method is on that project, and that is the series of steel that will be flowing through the shop for fab. And here on this particular building, we've got. Is this 2 stories, James?
Yes, this is actually a two-story building. It's actually a hospital that I use,
Okay,
and you have actually 3 stories, and then you have
got
the
it.
equipment level on the top. And basically, we are looking at two sequences that I'm breaking down into smaller areas, so I can build this project.
One area that this comes up important, if you're in the audience and you're doing 3D coordination for MEP, a lot of times the buildings will be zoned by level. And something that is particular to structural steel is, a column is going to go all the way up to however far it goes across multiple levels. So your sequencings will normally include some vertical zones. And that means you need to sign off MEP coordination everywhere the steel is within that sequence. So if you're down in the basement, you're moving to the first floor, but your steel sequence on the first floor goes up to the third, there's still some coordination where you have to jump up ahead. So the ability to have tools like this that can show you what steel is released, where it is in shipping, what's on site, I think are going to be really valuable as teams are trying to compress their coordination of MEP with those tie-ins. Keep going, James.
Yep, absolutely. So again, I've already gone in. I've created that little work set. Obviously, it's more of content that I'm trying to get at. The biggest thing that I like to bring across is tying into the available products. I'm going to be using, for example, this particular product, very popular product that, let me just go ahead and open this up so that you can get a view of it. This is it's kind of like the lifeblood for a shop. And in this particular MRP product, what it does is it deals with basically everything from estimating what it's going to cost for the fabricator to do it, all the way to the end of actually the erection part of it. It all kind of ties in together. So your inventory, your procurement, all of that is within this product. So what happens is that you have lot numbers over here, and then you're also going to have statuses on whether this thing is actually in the shop. And it's kind of like this well-oiled machine. It's kind of fascinating when you look at the way that these shops are working. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically going to pull that data in, especially members that are on hold, because I got to be careful. I don't want to put something on a trailer that has to go out and it's still on hold. That's a whole other topic for another time. So I'm going to go not look at the transaction log, but now I've brought in this data from this particular product here, and I can go ahead and say, okay, what's issued for fabrication, and I can start working on that particular area. Okay, so let's just kind of give you a little bit of an idea. Now, what I want to point out here is feedback. There's a lot of feedback data that comes across to you here, and you're going to see that along the way, and that's what I need when I'm loading the trailers. You've got to be able to load a trailer in the virtual world just like you would in the real world. And these are the capabilities. Again, that's why this fabrication model with these elements that are a high LOD of 350, and I noticed I said elements of 350 and 400 allow us to be able to go in there and create more accurate loading. And then I can fabricate based off of those loads, which is really important in getting that steel when you need it onto the site. So, okay, let's start off by actually showing you some of this. So I'm going to go and use these filters. I know I spend a little bit of time on it, but I want to start off with what? We want to load the trailers with the columns first. And this is a great training tool, by the way, just for those people that want to train loaders. Great way to train. So I always like to bring that training aspect because we got to build this next generation, right? And pass that experience down. So this is how you can do just that. So adding to the staging list, as you can see, we get the accumulated information and number of members. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I'm just going to grab a couple of things to try to get my point across here. Let's go in here 15 feet. 25. I am a trainer by heart, so I have a tendency to go into the weeds sometimes too much. They know about that on the committees, right? So I'm just going to go and me, it's like, well, what happens when it's revised? Okay, so let's go up here, and I'm just grabbing some steel that I'm going to use to give you an idea about the loading process. Now, trailers, everybody, it doesn't have to be just trailers. This can work with containers, rail cars, very important to be able to have that capability, because I had one person from Indonesia that was shipping across the ocean in a ship into the belly of the ship. And you just basically are picking this area. Now, let's go and add in. Now I can add in a couple of these here, and I'll kind of give a little brief explanation. There's the wheels for those people that love to see it. But what I'm looking at right here, this yellow is actually your dunnage. So if I were to take a look at, I should just use it from here because I don't know how much people know about this, but the wood, I said blocking, dunnage, wood, that's the wood that goes in between, and they nail different pieces together. So they might be nailing a bunch of 2x4s together, or they might be using something else. I don't care. I just give you the height. And that's what that is being represented right here by this piece right here, which is adjustable. And it's basically telling where this is the height of what's going to be located in between. Now I'm going to go in here and just adjust this, and I'm going to come over here and add in another quick one. Let's go ahead and make this different because this might be stacked. I mean, again, we could spend a lot of time talking about some of these things, but I'm going to try to reduce that. Now let's come in here and add in some of these pieces. Right now I'm kind of showing you how you can manually go in and start adding these in, and you're going, why is that ugly red color? Well, there's a reason for that. And the reason is because what happens is there's a problem with these pieces. If you look at them when you're trying to load them on, they're off the trailer or they're hitting something. So it's giving you that quick instant feedback that, hey, this is overhanging, and you've got to go ahead and figure out either by a thicker dunnage or whatever the case is. So this is, again, a mouse. I'm using a mouse. I am not moving these things in the shop. Little risk, right? So I'm going to come back up into this and say, you know what? We want to, let's go and have some, let's say I have a standing permit to have some overhang on the sides, which we, of course, are going to indicate that. And you can see how those colors have changed, right? So if I go in here, I'm going to adjust these a little bit. Let's go grab this piece right here. And I'm going to go ahead and adjust that. And then let's go ahead and move this piece around a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to just pop that one up a little bit. There we go. Okay. And then, of course, you have all your tools to be able to snap these things together, which is something that you're going to require. And you can also build a boneyard on the side. So let's go ahead and do just that. Let's go and rotate that around. And so you can basically, I know people that like to lay all their steel out and then basically load their trailer from there. So this again is what I'm doing just to kind of give you a quick idea. And now you can see that we have these things, these we call them extrusions that are sticking up here. And the whole thing about that is that you want to be able to go ahead and see. I'm just going to go ahead and use a dunnage that's going to be 6 inches. And I'm going to give you an idea by loading on a beam on top of here. Okay. So what we're seeing now is when this thing moves over, it's going to turn red because it's hitting that piece. So if I'm stacked several layers, I have this ability to go ahead and basically build a trailer, right? Again, it's really kind of handy to be able to have these different tools that it even shows you when I hit actually where those points are hitting, even if you see the steel there or not. So again, this was built in the idea to help people to be able to quickly and easily build these complicated trailers like some of the pictures that I was showing you earlier. Let's go ahead and stack a few pieces on here. So I'm just going to go grab some of these beams. I'm just going to go ahead and throw them on.
While you're working on this, James, one question I wanted to pass along with you is how many of your clients are having trailers where they're staging them, coming, parking the trailer, disconnecting, and bringing staged trailers where you're doing your picks of steel as you erect versus having a shakeout area on the job site
And
where you
that's
actually touch each piece of steel at least twice?
and this is where this thing kind of sings. Urban environments where you basically have no place for shakeout. You have no
Right.
place to lay this steel down. This is where this becomes very important because you want to make sure that that crane can pick off the trailer. I mean, again, we can spend hours going through things like what are they using RT, truck cranes, forklifts on the site, how are they loading it, and that all kind of impacts it. But you're absolutely right. The other type of staging I see too is I had there's one client that was doing an outage. Now they didn't use this product, but they were doing an outage for a big electrical plant, right? And so they actually had to lay the steel, fabricate it in not fabricate, but assemble it in a separate area, and then load it onto trailers assembled. So they had to be careful with the weight and everything else, and then bring it onto the site to quickly put that out because they only had like 24 hours to get all this steel up, right?
Right.
And so
Reassembly.
yeah, and this is where products like this will help out. Even it might not even have to be something that big. It could be something like I know a lot of people out in Colorado. They don't have some of these massive houses. They just don't have any place to lay the steel because you're on the side of a mountain. You know, so
And for general contractors running overall coordination, as you're planning your site layout, if you're working with fabricators that are utilizing this, technologies like this, one of the key things you're doing when you're doing the site layout for construction is understanding how much shakeout area where you need just position steel on site because you're not picking it from trailers. And so there's interplay here with the construction logistics and site layout piece. If your fabricators and erectors are using this kind of technology, and you can actually write this into your BIM execution plans using the new BIMform Global LOD 23 spec, where you can start outlining your expectations of what the team would need to do if you wanted to utilize this workflow.
it's kind of like choreography when you're trying to plan the site, especially with several shakeouts and several crane locations and everything else. So the 3D models have just revolutionized everything in our industry. We are 3D visual. In fact, as a detailer, when I started on the board, we couldn't hire anybody who couldn't visually see in 3D what they needed to have. Right. So, of course, I'm just kind of giving you some of the different elements here while, you know, Will is talking about, we got to send bolts, barrels of bolts. Those are some of the things that you have to go ahead and send across. Let's go and just do a couple of those. Now, these things are buyouts, so we know they run about 300 pounds. And because we're just basically building shapes on this, we can go take those and load those onto our trailer. Let's go back here to this trailer and I can go ahead and start loading these onto the trailer. And yes, I can load multiple trailers. And what you need is, remember I talked about the balancing and height stuff? Here's an example where this is exceeding the maximum height that I set for the trailer. Now, this product here just simply goes in and says, hey, you're exceeding this, but you do what you want because you're the boss. Right. And that's a flexibility that you really, really do want to kind of have there. Plus, you're getting this here is your center of gravity. This is your center of trailer. This is your gravity. And this is displayed on those load maps that I was talking about. So you can actually send that off to the driver before they come. They could review this in the pajamas so they can go ahead and say, hey, you know what? This one, no, I'm not going to pull that one. You need to fix it. Right? As opposed to having it just at that moment when he arrives saying, I'm not going to pull that. And yes, that does happen. Or, hey, we got a 48-foot trailer instead of a 53-foot trailer. Again, I'm going to pull back because we're not going to get into that level of detail. But there's so many benefits that people are not
And
aware of.
you're referring to the driver refusing
Yes,
to pull the lever.
yes, and that does happen from improperly balanced loads, or when they haul it off to the scales to see if it's balanced. Now I can see whether it's balanced right here. As this gets closer to the center, I had one guy who was so excited he sent me the actual scale, the weight, the document from the weight because it was only 80 pounds different between his the rear axle of the cab and the axle of the trailer, and he's just, I've never had only an 80-pound difference, you know. Well, he was very excited, let's just say about that. So these are just some of the things that you can have, plus viewing the load capacity that I set, the height capacities. And of course, I mean, I can go in and just keep showing more of these things. Like, for example, I'm going to go and add in a bundle, but and I can always come back when we get into questions about this. We can always add in more after, but I really do want to get to those questions that people might have. Oh, that's kind of odd looking, isn't it? But let's go in here and
So again, you're
add that on
pulling
top.
these members from the sequence that we already identified,
Mm-hmm.
and this data is going to be updated to the model as to what trailer it's on and if the trailer shipped and when it hasn't.
Yep, exactly. And in fact, most of the time, though, they'll use their MRP product. That's why we send this back to them with the trailer
Okay.
load with all the materials, because again, they want that, for the shipping and everything else, the logistics will be done in the MRP. We're just providing that data. I mean, this is simply taking this data, this
Sure.
rich database, and using it to enhance everything that you're doing. So, I mean, let's just kind of cut to the quick on some of these things. You get these automated tools too, as well. Like for example, this one here. Oh, no, let me go ahead and bring that in. This particular tool allows me to go ahead and auto stack angles. And then I can get a nice idea of what this is one of my favorite tools because it allows me to go ahead. I just did a wishbone, see how it went in there and it stacked all these angles for us. So this then, of course, can be placed onto my trailer wherever I want. I can place it on a pallet and then place it on a trailer. And these are just some of the things that some of the benefits of having this 3D model and to be able to plan this out.
And those are all of the angles needed for that sequence of steel to be erected.
Exactly, and that's what we're
And,
kind of we're kind of looking at there.
and so you've already grouped them, bundled them, and now you can just place them on the trailer load.
Exactly, and that's what you kind of want to do. I mean, what how are we doing right now? We're at 10:32. Okay, I do want to give some more time for questions. I could just
Sure.
sit here and do a show and tell forever, showing you a lot of these different things. I can come in here. Let me just go and do a quick. And the point is, you notice that I can flip back and forth. Okay. So I can set my filters, flip back and forth, look for pieces that are 20-foot long that weigh a certain amount. I can go ahead and do that right from my trailer by selecting that information on the trailer. I can go select my pieces and I can get that data and create a filter right from here, go back to my staging model and go ahead and start throwing them onto the list, right? So this gives you a lot of that flexibility. I'm going to go in here and grab some of these to do kind of a grand finale of some of this stuff here. Let's go add that, add those in there. I'm just throwing these on and I'm going to use a particular tool that well, basically, this is great for straight steel, and then you can fill in the blanks,
Ah,
right? So that
yeah.
allows you to bring in, especially the straight stuff that you want to load on. And of course, then you can modify it, move it around, change it from layer to layer, all of that stuff. But what I want to get at right here on this is I'm going to go and save this off to my desktop. There we go. Okay. So revisions. Anybody who knows me knows I'm always harping on changes because I've seen so many softwares that collapse when it comes to the changing portion. And as we know, the first time around is great, but then after that, it gets difficult when things change. So that's what this particular software was a higher priority for the product owner to go in there and make sure that it was able to handle and give an audit trail of information that is going to be updated. So now what it's going to do is it takes a little while, but it's going to go through it. It does all the comparison, looking at the steel that's on a trailer and look at the steel that's not. And then it gives you a list saying, hey, these pieces no longer fit on this trailer. These have been removed from the trailer. So that's basically what happens. That's what I'm doing right now is it's going through that and it'll give me this report. Let's see if I can talk as long as it's going to take. Yeah.
And so I've got some scenarios I might throw out to you while this is cooking.
Yeah.
Um, let's say, we've got a project, and from AISC background, we know that field cut beam penetrations are a lot more expensive than shop fabricated openings. For say we're cutting web openings and
Mm-hmm.
beams to pass plumbing through, or roof
Mm-hmm.
drains, of that nature, or ductwork.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's say there's a few of the beams that, due to coordination of that MEP space, we want to create web opening penetrations in the steel beams.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've identified those. That might be an example of where we have that beam on hold,
Mm-hmm.
because the steel's already been, released for fabrication, but we found a few more web openings we wanted to add. How would that work in this workflow? So let's say on that floor, there was a handful of them that we wanted to add shop fabricated web openings in?
Well, it depends when you're everything always it comes back to it depends. Meaning like where in the shop are those pieces? If they were on hold and they haven't even gone into production, remember how I was grabbing that information from that production area? They would have a marking as being hold and I would hide them from me so that I wouldn't load them onto the trailer.
Got it.
Now, when they were available, and let's say they were available before the time that that trailer was shipped, okay, I could go in there and I can take those pieces and I can load them onto the trailer. I can move things around
Right.
to say that this needs to go on this trailer and these ones need to be pulled off that trailer. And then run a new bill of lading and then run a new load map and a new IFC and everything else that's required with it. So again, and then of course you have the other situation. If it's a field work, then it'll just be another. Let's just say it was something that came after it was fabricated and already shipped. That's why I'm saying it depends. Then you could go ahead and you'd have them in the model and you could go ahead update the model, which would show the new openings, especially if the openings have things that may cause clashes, right? And then you could go ahead and load those onto a trailer and send them out. So I hope that answers that
It did.
question, but we pretty much got you covered with this. And this is what I'm showing right here is how it went through and it found what was on the trailers because this is what happens halfway through the project. What happens? Something changes. Sequence might change, right? You know, maybe the erector says, "Oh, we just found out we have to erect from the other side." I've had that happen. You know, instead of going from east to west, they got to go west to east. You've got to be able to adjust for that. And that's what happened right here is I ran through this thing. I can get a nice I'm an audit trail person. Give me that document telling me that this is exactly what happened. And you can see right here how these now are hitting each other on this particular trailer. See that? So it gives me that information, and I love
And that's
feedback.
because those beam sizes adjusted.
That's right. And you
So
can
it
see
was
how you've got this ability to go through and you can look, you know, just by going through, it turns it red, puts this information on it, which allows me to go and find out exactly what's going on. And that's the other benefit here is that I can look for a particular beam. I can go ahead and I can find any of those loadables. We call them loadables because it could be concrete or it could be steel or it could be, you know, anything. So we can go through and we can find those different pieces and it's going to go ahead and bring us to where they're at. Okay. And that is very handy when you get that call in the shop saying, "Where's my steel?" Now, I will be honest, if the loader didn't follow the load maps to load it, then yeah, there might be a problem here, right? But generally, that's what they'll do is they'll scan them as they load them. So that way you know that they're on those trailers and you can readjust after, right? You know, maybe something couldn't make it or something at the last minute had to get pulled. This is a reality that we live with in the fabrication world. Okay. With some of these changes. Now, next thing I want to kind of point out, I showed you the fine, but let's see. I got to make sure that we stay in time here. I want to respect everybody's time.
There's about
Um,
3 minutes.
but what I want to show you is the exporting capabilities. So I can export single bundles. And let me explain that. A lot of people will bundle everything in the shop and then ship that out to the yard in bundles and then place it onto the trailer. Okay. So you need to show them how to export that. So you have the bill of lading, which is a 2D. You have your load map, which is that 2D image. There's some other products that we interface with. There's the IFC loads, which sends out a 2x3, which is going to send all of that extra, that data rich information, plus any data that was added, like the loads or any work sets or whatever that you've added in here to send that off to the erector. And the same thing here with this IFC model. So just for time's sake, I've kind of already done that on a different model. Just to make sure that everybody knows there's nothing up my sleeve. So here's an example of your bill of lading, which shows you what layer and all that data with the load. And again, as this changes, you just export it again, right? You know, as opposed to trying to go through the Excel, find the pieces that have modified that you generally have to do right now. That's why having that model is so important. Then you have there's that bundle showing how to stack those angles so that you have, and again, this applies to all your bundles. And I also have an example of a trailer that I loaded with the information. But one of the nice things is certain products have the ability to run everything off a tablet. It's becoming more common in the shop to run off a tablet. Okay. So what happens here is that you can actually place these onto a tablet using this particular product. So I can go ahead and I can actually break. This is what I love about it is I can select this item and I can grab all of that information. See that? And you can filter down and you can find this. And, imagine being able to, in fact, one person, Chris Kayak, took one of these and brought this into AR where he was able to use his goggles and to be able to, because we just send up the IFC. You guys take whatever viewer you're using that can read these IFC2X3s, and away you go. You got all that data. You utilize whatever capability that particular tool might have. I did this as a yard. I could send them out as individual trailers, or I could send it out as a whole group. You know, so just to kind of give you an idea about that. But this is
And
what
this is one thing I appreciate you doing, James, because you're showing a cocktail of applications. Because one of the things we run a balance at BIMForm Global on, we're really about process, and we work at being software agnostic. The LOD specification at BIMForm Global is software agnostic, and you've kind of shown us a mixture of SDS2 and Trimble, and that's an important highlight of the workflow.
It's all about working. The dream has always been interface, at least in my book.
Yeah.
That ability that people could use whatever product suits them best, and then to be able to interface. The whole one-stop shop that does everything, I personally have never seen great success. I think it's a matter of all these different pieces come together. That's kind of my philosophy.
And competition spurs excellence.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we could go into that on another bar conversation, but so now this is the area that the if I could spell right, um, right here, all that data I can filter on because it's all passed out in this IFC file. So, for example, I can come in here and turn to red, and I can even burrow down to each individual member and see where it's. There's those. I love this one because you see you have all these little pieces here. Let's see. Go ahead and isolate that. So I don't know how many times in the field you're trying to find these little pieces of junk. Where are they? Where do they go? And so forth. And that's, again, this is the benefit. It all comes back to utilizing these fabrication models with, that LOD 350 to 400 elements within that model. And the reason I say that is because there is no such thing as an LOD, 400 model, right? Which I'm sure you probably have, all the clients here probably know that. So, does this, again, I know this was high level and quick, and you can always contact the software vendors to find out more about this, in depth. But basically, I'm hoping this conveyed at least some interest in this.
Oh, you gave us a lot of food for thought here, and I want to encourage any of the audience to send in questions. There's a few that I had written down here that I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about steel today. What are you seeing any clients use this in the precast arena with precast concrete?
There's actually some products out there that do work with precast already.
Okay.
Again, they're not based on the IFC. Well, some of them are actually, but there is some stuff. This again is kind of a fledgling thing. Even this product I've shown you is relatively new and has great potential down the road for development. My dream of using this is that's why we call them loadables, is to use this
Right.
because every project has concrete, steel, and could even have like glue lam, right?
Yes.
And so it has to be able to take all of these different types of objects. That's why I chose the IFC 2X3 because just about everybody does it. Now, again, there's some IFC 2X3s that don't come in because not everybody follows that standard and they put the location for the weight because we don't determine the weight. We make the authoring tool determine the weight, so we don't have to worry about it. You
Oh,
know,
got it.
and that's a great way because if you have mixed elements, let's say glue lam with steel, I don't want to be sitting there trying to calculate that weight.
Right.
So
That was another thing I was going to ask about mass timber. If you had any users using it in the mass timber.
Well, there were some people that were interested in that because timber is becoming so popular too. There are people that were interested using. We work with the CAD Work product IFC right now. That doesn't mean it's really not. All we need to do is locate in the IFC file where that particular weight is. And then we could go ahead and utilize that and add that into our list. We just kind of started with the most popular ones. Like we have BoCAD because we had one client who was doing stacks, great big pipes and stacks with it. So yeah, there's just an endless supply of possibilities. So you really will want to use this with. Actually, I was talking to one person who did stages. Think
Yeah,
about it for shipping stages, because whenever you go to a football game or to a
concert.
concert, you've got all these massive frames they have to be shipped, right?
Right.
And if I had my dream, we'd be doing all that right now. But starting off 3D model. Next question.
Yeah. So there are some teams doing things, at higher LODs for like precast and Revit. Um, any challenges with Revit IFCs working in with this workflow, or do you have any users using that?
No. I've had people that want to do it from the Revit level, and this is how can I put this? Revit is a great tool for what
Right.
it does, and this is why we're kind of leaning on the fabrication, because we want to make this we see
Right.
that at that position as to be more accurate. Now, if we could get an IFC from Revit, yeah, we could start maybe doing some of that. But
Yeah. I'm
again,
thinking
we.
more in the line of things like precast that are simpler shapes.
Hmm. Well, precast, like I said, is that you could take it from Revit and import it into your your fabrication authoring tool, and then
Then go
build
in.
it from there, you know?
Yeah.
So there are ways to kind of circumvent that. But yeah, no, right now, again, the sky's always the limit, as we have people, I have a number of programmers say it's a simple matter of programming, which is a loaded phrase when you hear it, because that also means it could take a day or 20 years. But, anybody who's worked with programming. But my point being is that, yes, Revit, we do not have any users that are using that at this point in time.
Sure. Okay. Um, what are the kind of the next stages on the roadmap for this product?
Well, again, a lot of that is up to the company. For this particular product, I'm not going to speak for other ones, but for this particular product, there is that's kind of up to our production manager and that group of teams. I know what I would like to be moving into is we do get a lot of requests for to have the dunnage, because wood does have about 300 pounds on a trailer, and they would like to show exactly how things would be done with that. I'm just telling you not what's happening, but what I would
Yeah.
like to see is to be able to automate the load number, the number of the objects on how they're loaded, so that you could actually go through and say not just the columns, but this column is number one. You can do that now, but it's a manual operation, so it'd be better to have that as another operation. Of course, enhancements of physical fixes. What I would like to move towards more is what I would like to see, not exactly what's going to happen. So please take that with a grain of
Sure.
salt. But what I would like to see is the bridge loading, basically how much pressure is being applied at each axle onto the concrete from the load. And then I would also like to toy around with tying into some of the logistics of shipping, the routing, like how to get to the site.
There's
Oh
a
my goodness,
junction
there's a
I
train
have.
bridge, right?
Yeah, like clearance heights,
Yep.
bridge clearance.
Turn, clearance heights. I mean, there's products out there, brilliant logistic products out there that already exist. And that would be kind of a tie in that I think would just be really kind of beneficial. And of course, always more and more automation. Automate the stacking of channels, automate the stacking of straight steel, things like that, to get our original goal was to basically allow you to pick part of the model and just have it auto stack it. Well, we were naive. We realized that that was a lot more complicated than we thought. The algorithms
Yeah.
become very complicated. And then I will tell you, no two loaders load a trailer the same, and no one loader will load and reload a trailer the same. And I kind of equate that to when you go and pack to go camping. For those that go camping, you load it one way, and then have you ever gone traveling and wonder why your suitcase has more stuff in it on the way home? So, I mean, these are just some of the things that there is a lot of, like I said at the beginning, gut feel to it.
That makes a lot of sense. And so we've talked about where you'd have advantages in this. Um, Obviously, tight urban areas, tight site logistics, also really critical path handovers in the erection of the steel, like special projects where you've got to do, you may have a 24-hour window.
Hmm.
Um, Elaborate a little more on the training piece. Does SDS2 have it where your products are available in vocational schools and colleges?
I would love it to be that at the point. I do not believe that's what they've done. But when I
Mhm.
was talking about the training portion, we do for our other products. We do have you know, we offer for our flagship product, we offer um, of the steel SDS2, we do offer training packages, and I've helped education because to me that's very important is
Yeah,
the educational aspect of it. Load planning hasn't made it in yet, but I'm sure if somebody wants to go ahead and adopt that, I will give them all the training that I do and all the information and fill
yeah,
that up from there. Because, the reality of it is that I was referring to training inside the shop. There's a
sure.
lot of turnover for loaders. And usually you have one, maybe two loaders that are your experienced loaders. And they're not always doing that all the time.
Right.
But these people are so valuable in the shop that if you lose them, it's
Yep.
amazing how much chaos occurs. So to be able to cross train by allowing a novice loader to go in there and use this product without gumming up the shop, right, to
Yeah.
load, and then basically taking that load map and going to the experienced guy, and they could say, no, we would do it this way, we would do it that way. That actually frees up the loader.
Yeah. So when you do your normal implementation of this, let's say we've got general contractors and they're interested in seeing their teams leverage this kind of capability on the fabricators that they retain,
Hmm.
and they share this information with some fabricators they're looking at using. How long would it typically? Is it a couple day course? Is it a 1 day course?
Oh, I get them up and running. Basically, I'll get them up and running in about 5 hours,
Okay.
and
So like,
then
and you
that,
probably do
that
that
follow
remote.
up. Yeah. Oh, everything's done remote, and then I do follow up on it, and that's
Okay.
how we usually handle it. Is just to do the follow up on it. But again, I mean, these things are all. Like I said, the purpose of this presentation is just to get people to understand that let's get these 3D models used here
Yeah.
and let's benefit from it. Now, here's just to give you an idea. I have actually detailing firms that are using this to offer it as a service to their fabricator.
Oh, I see. Expanding services.
We're all looking to expand those services and try to retain people, retain clients. And when you can offer more, it's good. It really is. So
So does the product have a free viewer level where you've got someone who's doing the loading, but then someone else needs to consume it?
export the IFC, and they can open it up in any IFC reader from BIM
Oh,
Vision
I see.
to BIM Plus to Trimble Connect to whatever reads an IFC 2X3. Navisworks, if that's what you have in house, right?
I see. So you're just riding on top of their existing infrastructure.
I always tell people I'm lazy. I leverage all the different products that are available to me. I
Certainly.
just provide you the data and you digest it in the way that you want to digest it.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing many other questions right now.
Okay.
What I would say is, again, James, I really want to thank you for your time
Welcome.
and also your contributions to the BIM Forum Global LOD specification. We've got updates we're working on right now for 24. And one of the things we are looking at doing is a white paper on this topic. And we would use some of your presentation today to work on that.
Okay.
And I think future pathways down this topic would include um, building out a white paper on this, but then also looking at use cases. You've got, Fabricator. Fabricator number one is in software platform A, and what does that look like? And take a section of maybe one of these sample buildings and show that workflow through with like sample files they could view. And then Fabricator 2 is in a different software platform. Show that through, um, and kind of build on your theme of collaboration here,
Yep.
because I think that's something that will also help the general contractors that are driving lean construction processes, to just be knowledgeable. They may not get down into the weeds of what's going on at the detailing level within the structural steel, the miscellaneous steel, etc. But these kind of presentations, I think, are helpful, across the range of the stakeholders in delivering the building, because there's
Absolutely.
things here that help the MEP coordinator. There's things here that help the general contractor doing their site planning and logistics. Obviously, shipping, that was a big theme of today.
Well, you tie this in. To me, there's power in numbers. So you tie this in with some of the existing crane programs out there, that are people that are using, we even have a crane product in ours. There's other companies that have crane products. I know that there's some really good. I mean, there's products like Synchro that runs the shop. I can pull data in from Synchro into the load planning through a CSV file. So, this is all beneficial when you start to figure out how to tie these things together, and each, like you said, competition, but also the fact that, everybody is benefiting from it. That's the whole initiative of this over the past, since it was EDI, you probably remember that term, right?
Electronic data interchange.
Interchange. Yep. Gosh, that's going back.
I did my master's in 3D parametric modeling. It was a structural engineering focused master's, and it was in the mid '90s. And
Hmm.
things have come so far.
Did you work with Bob from NIST?
Did and
Yeah.
I was at Washington University in St. Louis, so at that time I would just reference works from him and others. But Dr. Eastman,
Hmm.
served with him on AISC's TI committee at the time, Technology Integration
Yep.
Committee,
Yep.
and just a lot of just great legends who've helped lead the industry in this path. And we can all
Trailblazers. They were the ones with
trailblazers.
the machetes out in the front.
We stand on their shoulders
Absolutely.
in that regard. But at that time, I think we had 64 megabytes of RAM on a 486DX computer. And I think
Woohoo.
my watch has more computer power than the
Exactly.
systems I was working on my master's on in the mid '90s. And so it's hard to imagine how much things have changed. And now, as we approach machine learning and automation, I think arguably the steel industry's changed more in the last 15 years than it did the previous 150.
But now the problem is getting everybody to catch up.
It is the sociology and training you've alluded to,
Yeah.
and I really think in the next 5 years it's going to change more than it did the last 15. The rate of integration and aggregation of data is really going to be driving things. With that, Mr. Luna, we will hand it over. Thank you so much for planning this and this opportunity where I get to visit with James. And James, I look forward to the next decade with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Same likewise back at you. Have a good
Very
day.
good. Thank you for everyone. We'll have this recording on the YouTube channel.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, James, for your time.